The cry beside the trash. The wind was cold that evening. John, a middle-aged human man, walked slowly through the colony outskirts. He worked in the main city as a repairman, but today he had stayed late to fix a broken fence outside the food supply center. As he passed by the trash zone where spoiled food and old parts were dumped, he heard something. It was soft. Weak. A cry. He stopped. It didn't sound like an animal. It didn't sound human either. It was sad, like the voice of someone who had cried for too long and had no strength left. John turned his head and looked toward the pile of broken crates and dirty blankets near the wall. He moved closer, slowly. His boots made soft crunching sounds over dry leaves and old metal scraps. And then he saw her. A figure, thin and shaking, was curled up beside the trash heap. She was not human. Her skin was pale blue, almost gray. Her long arms wrapped tightly around something small, a baby. The baby was crying, quiet but painful. Like its little body had no more energy to scream louder. John's breath caught in his throat. The alien woman's eyes opened, big, glassy, and full of fear. She didn't speak. She didn't beg. She just looked at him, like she was already used to being ignored. John kneeled down, keeping some distance. "You okay?" he asked gently. No answer. The baby made a soft coughing sound. Its body was thin, too thin. Its ribs showed through its tiny chest. "Are you hungry?" John asked. Again, still no answer. But the mother held the child tighter, as if hiding it from the world. John slowly reached into his bag. He had half a bread loaf and some dried fruit. He placed them on the ground between them and stood up again. "Take it. Please," he said. The alien widow stared at the food. Her lips trembled, but her hands didn't move. She looked at John, then the food, then back at John. Her body was weak. Her mind was unsure. John sighed and turned to leave. Maybe she didn't trust him. Maybe she thought he was a threat. That was fine. He couldn't force help. But as he walked away, he heard a soft rustle behind him. He looked back. The mother was reaching, slow, shaking fingers, toward the bread. She broke off a small piece and brought it to the baby's mouth. The baby stopped, crying. For a second. Then, as the child chewed the bread with dry lips, it looked up at its mother and let out a soft giggle. And that's when the alien woman burst into tears. She covered her face with her hands, rocking back and forth, holding the child close. Silent sobs shook her thin shoulders. The food fell from her lap. Her baby still tried to eat, not understanding why its mother was crying now. John stood there, frozen. He had seen many sad things in the galaxy. He had repaired war-damaged homes, helped clean up after floods, even carried wounded men from explosions. But this quiet suffering beside trash, this mother with nothing, not even strength to ask for help, hit something deep inside him. He took a slow step back toward her. "I'll come tomorrow," he said softly. "I'll bring more food, maybe some blankets." The woman didn't look at him, but she nodded once, very slowly. John walked away, his heart heavy. The stars were coming out now, blinking above the colony roofs. Behind him, in the trash-strewn alley, a starving widow held her child tighter than ever. And for the first time in days, they had a little warmth in their stomachs. But tomorrow was uncertain, and John knew. If he didn't come back, maybe no one would. The next morning, John returned. The cold wind still blew through the alleyways of the colony's edge. He wore a thick jacket this time and carried a small bag. Inside was warm soup in a sealed container, fresh bread, a clean blanket, and a small bottle of water. He didn't know if they would still be there, but he hoped. When he reached the same spot near the trash heap, he stopped. The blankets were still there, but the alien mother and child were gone. His heart sank. Had someone taken them? Had they run away? Then, just as he turned to leave, he heard a cough, It came from under a broken sheet of metal near a pile of old machine parts. John moved closer, knelt, and gently lifted the sheet. There they were. The alien widow sat huddled in the corner, trying to shield her child from the cold wind. The baby looked pale, weaker than before. The mother's eyes opened wide when she saw him again, but this time she didn't look scared. Just tired. Very tired. "I told you I'd come back," John said softly. He sat cross-legged a few feet away and placed the bag on the ground between them. "I brought warm food. Not much, but enough for you both." She didn't move. The baby let out a faint sound, a whimper, not even a full cry. Its head lay limp against her chest. John took out the soup container and opened the lid. Steam rose into the air. The smell reached her. He saw her nose twitch. Her lips parted. For a second, her hand moved, but then she pulled it back and turned, her face away. John frowned. "What's wrong?" he asked gently. Still no reply. He pushed the bread toward her. "Please, at least eat something. The baby needs you." She shook her head slowly. Her eyes filled with tears. I don't deserve it," she said in a low, raspy voice. "I stole. I survived when others didn't. I begged and was kicked. No one ever helped. Why would you?" John's chest tightened. "Because you're still breathing," he said. "Because he's still breathing." He looked down at the child whose tiny hand now reached weakly for the steam. "I'm not here to judge you," John said. "I just want to help." The alien woman looked at him again. Her eyes were full of something more than sadness now. Confusion, pain, hope, trying to rise but not sure if it should. She reached slowly, but her fingers stopped just inches from the food. "I can't," she whispered. "If I take this, what if tomorrow you're gone? What if no one ever helps again?" Her voice cracked. John was quiet for a moment. Then he did something unexpected. He took the bread, broke a piece off, and took a bite himself. "See?" He smiled softly. "It's real. It's not poisoned. It's not a trick." Then he carefully poured some soup into a small cup and placed it on a clean cloth in front of her. She stared at the cup. The baby whimpered again. John stood up slowly and stepped back. "You don't have to trust me today," he said. "But I'll still come back tomorrow, and the next day, until you believe someone cares." He turned and walked away. Behind him, the metal sheet rustled. The alien widow, hands trembling, picked up the cup. The soup was still warm. She held the edge to her lips, and just as the first drop touched her tongue, her throat tightened. She held it there for a moment, eyes closed, letting it sit like gold on her tongue. Then gently she touched it to the baby's lips. The child made a soft, weak sound and swallowed. For a moment, everything was still. No wind, no sound. Just the quiet hum of a broken world and two fading lives trying to survive inside it. Then, softly, the alien mother began to weep again. But this time, her tears were quiet. Not from fear, but from something else. Something she had almost forgotten existed. Kindness. Rain fell hard the next evening. John pulled his hood over his head as he walked through the colony's outer district. Water dripped from his sleeves and the muddy ground sucked at his boots. The bag on his shoulder was heavier today. It held more food, clean cloth, a dry blanket, and a small heater. But when he reached the same spot, the old trash heap near the fence, the alien woman and her baby were gone. His heart dropped. The metal sheet was also gone. The blankets, gone. Only a few crumbs and soft prints in the mud remained, washed away by the rain. He looked around in every direction. Nothing. Then, far in the distance, he saw a faint flicker. A soft golden blink through a crack in the ruins. It was coming from a collapsed warehouse, long abandoned, half covered in vines and rust. John didn't hesitate. He made his way toward the broken structure, stepping over sharp metal, ducking under cracked beams. The deeper he went, the darker it became, until the light appeared again. It was a glowstone, small, faint. Near it, under a bent piece of sheet metal and scraps of wood, sat the alien widow. She was crouched in silence, holding her child close to her chest. The baby looked even weaker now. Its eyes were half open, its mouth dry. John's voice was soft. "I found you." The widow looked up, startled. She seemed thinner, her face hollow and pale. Her lips moved, but said nothing. She clutched the child tighter as if afraid he might take her baby away. John raised both hands to show peace. "I brought warmth," he said, "and food, and something to help the baby." He sat down, gently placing the bag beside him. The air inside the broken building was cold and smelled of rust. The wind hissed through the gaps in the walls. The woman's eyes stayed on him, but she didn't speak. John pulled out the heater, a small cube that gave off soft, safe warmth, and placed it on the ground between them. It hummed quietly. Slowly, the air grew a little warmer. The alien mother blinked in surprise. John then opened the food container. It held soft cooked grains and sweet paste, easy for a weak baby to swallow. He offered the small spoon toward her. This time she didn't. "Refuse." Her hand moved slowly. She dipped the spoon, scooped some paste, and gently fed it to her child. The baby swallowed. Then another spoon, and another. Tears ran down her cheeks, not from fear, but from quiet relief. "You moved," John said softly. "I thought I lost you." The woman finally spoke. Her voice was almost a whisper. "Someone tried to hurt us last night." John's eyes narrowed. "Who?" "Two men," she said. "They saw your food, said I must have stolen it. They kicked me, took my blanket." John's fist tightened, his face grew hard. "They didn't care my child was crying. They called us filth." John took a deep breath. "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry." The widow looked down. "I came here to die quietly. I didn't want my child to be seen like this." John shook his head. "No one should live like this. No one." He reached into the bag again and pulled out a small bottle. It was baby medicine, something he had asked a doctor friend for. He gave it to her with simple instructions. She nodded and gently placed a drop under the baby's tongue. Minutes passed. The heater hummed. The baby rested, and then the little one let out a soft sound. It was a giggle, weak but real. The alien mother covered her mouth. Her eyes widened. She hadn't heard that sound in many days. Maybe never before. John smiled. "There you go. That's what life should sound like." The woman wiped her tears. "I don't know your name," she whispered. "John," he said. She hesitated, then whispered, "I'm Neza." He nodded. "Neza, you and your child will not die in this ruin." Outside, the rain still fell. But inside the broken building, something warm had begun to grow. Hope. The next morning, John couldn't work. His hands picked up tools, but his mind stayed in the ruins, with Neza and her baby. He kept seeing the child's thin fingers, kept hearing the mother's voice. "We came here to die quietly." He had seen poverty. He had seen pain. But something about her, about them, it clung to him, like their fate was somehow tied to his. He threw down the wrench and grabbed his jacket. Today he would do more than bring food. When John returned to the warehouse, Neza was sitting near the heater, rocking her baby. The child had more color in its face. It looked peaceful now, sleeping with its mouth slightly open. John stepped in quietly, carrying a small bag, a folded blanket, and something new, a soft, handmade baby wrap. Neza looked up. "You came again?" she said, almost surprised. "I told you," John replied. "I don't break promises." She looked at the baby wrap, confused. "What is that?" He sat beside her. A sling. You can wear it, and keep him close to your chest. It'll help keep him warm. Neza touched the fabric like it was made of gold. I don't know how to thank you, she whispered. You don't have to, John replied gently. But then, he looked serious. Neza, I want to take you to the medical station. She froze. No, she said quickly. They don't help people like me. They will if I bring you, he said. You don't understand. Last time I went there, they pushed me out. They told me I smelled like death. They called my baby a burden. John's jaw clenched. That was before, he said. Now you're with me. She looked at him confused. Why do you care so much? John paused for a moment. Then he spoke quietly. My wife died 5 years ago, he said. She was human. Our baby didn't make it either. I couldn't protect them. Neza's eyes softened. I see you holding your child like she's the only thing left in the universe, he continued. And I know that look. I know that pain. Silence filled the air between them. I couldn't save them, John said. But maybe I can save you? Neza stared at him, tears forming again. You don't even know me, she whispered. I don't need to. He stood up and held out his hand. Come with me. She looked down at her baby, then up at the broken walls around her, the cold wind that never stopped, the dripping pipes, the rats, the fear. And then, she reached up and took his hand. They didn't walk through the main roads. John took back paths, alleys, and old service tunnels. He didn't want attention, not yet. They finally reached the back entrance of the medical station. John's old friend Nurse Mel was working there. She owed him a favor from years ago. When Mel saw the pale alien woman with the sick child, her eyes widened, but she didn't ask questions. She took them in. Neza sat on a clean bed for the first time in weeks. The baby was examined, fed a formula that made him breathe easier, and given a warm cloth bath. Neza watched every movement with wide, scared eyes, but no one hurt them. No one pushed them out. And when the nurse wrapped her baby in a clean blanket, Neza cried quietly again. John stood at the door the whole time, watching. Finally, when the baby slept again, Neza looked at him. You did this. He shook his head. You did. You stayed alive long enough for me to find you. She smiled for the first time. It was small, but real. The stars were out when John walked them home, not to the trash heap, not to the broken warehouse, but to something new. An old tool shed behind his workshop, forgotten, dusty, but dry. John had spent the afternoon fixing it. He cleaned the floor, patched the holes, and even found an old heating lamp. It wasn't much, but it was safe. When Neza stepped inside, she stopped. There was a small bed made of cushions and cloth, a folded blanket, a tiny lantern glowing gently in the corner. This is for us? She asked softly. John nodded. She held her baby tighter, her body still too weak to stand straight. Why? John looked at her, then at the child sleeping in her arms. You don't need to live in the dark anymore. The next few days passed quietly. John brought food every morning and returned at night to check on them. Sometimes he'd find Neza humming to the child, other times just sitting staring into the warm light like she still didn't believe it was real. One night John brought something else. A gift wrapped in cloth. Neza opened it with shaky fingers. Inside was a soft red blanket, hand-stitched, warm to the touch. She gasped. It's beautiful. It belonged to my son, John said. He never got to use it. I think maybe your baby was meant to have it. Neza held the blanket close to her chest, her fingers trembled. Then she gently wrapped it around her sleeping child. He looked peaceful, warmer, alive. Later that night, John lit a small fire outside the shed. The stars flickered above them. Neza stepped out, holding her baby close in the sling. Her eyes glowed softly in the firelight. I don't know how to say thank you, she whispered. John didn't reply right away. He tossed another piece of wood into the flames and watched the sparks dance into the sky. You don't have to say anything, he finally said. But I do want to ask something. She looked at him carefully. Do you have a plan? After this? A place to go? Nexa looked down. No. I have nothing. No family, no money. Just him. Her voice cracked. I was married, she said slowly. He was strong. A warrior. But he died saving our ship. Pirates attacked. He sent me and our baby away in an escape pod. She paused, blinking back. Tears. I thought I'd find help. I thought someone would care, but they didn't. Everyone just saw a problem, a beggar, a burden. John stared into the fire. Not everyone. She looked at him with soft, tired eyes. No, she said. Not you. A long silence passed between them. The fire crackled gently. The baby stirred, then went still again. Then Nexa said something that surprised John. My people believe those who save others in darkness are chosen souls. Sacred. John chuckled quietly. I'm just a man with a toolbox. She smiled gently. Maybe. But to me, you're the fire that didn't burn. You're the flame that warmed. That night, Nexa fell asleep holding her child, wrapped in the red blanket beside the heater John left behind. She didn't cry. She didn't shiver. She simply rested, for the first time in a long time. And John, he stood outside the shed, watching the stars. He didn't know what would come next, but for now, 2 lives had light again, and that was enough. The days grew warmer. Birds began returning to the eau, trees near the colony walls. Children played in the dust again. But inside the old shed behind John's workshop, something much quieter was blooming. Peace. Each morning, Nexa would greet him with a soft smile. The baby, now stronger, would reach for John's fingers and giggle when he made silly faces. John brought them food, water, clean clothes. But what he gave most was time. Time to heal. Time to breathe. And then, one night, when the stars were hidden behind clouds, Nexa told him the truth. She was sitting on the small bed, brushing the baby's soft hair with her fingers. The child had just fallen asleep, wrapped in the red blanket. John sat nearby, sipping warm tea. There was a long silence between them, comfortable, but deep. Then Nexa looked up. There's something I haven't told you, she said. John glanced over. Her face looked different, sad, yes, but also afraid. You don't have to, he said gently. No, she whispered. I do. She took a deep breath. My husband, he wasn't just a warrior. He was the son of a noble house, a royal bloodline from a moon called Irulan. We were supposed to live in safety. My child was born in a golden chamber. John blinked. Wait, you were… Yes, she said. I was a princess once, or close enough. She gave a dry, broken laugh. And now look at me, hiding in an old human shed, begging for soup. John didn't speak. He just listened. When the war started, she continued, his family called us back. But we were already in space. On a diplomatic mission, pirates attacked. My husband stayed behind to fight while I escaped with our son. When I landed here, no one believed who I was. I had no proof, no crown, no guards, just a child and a name no one cared about. John nodded slowly. They saw you as a refugee, not royalty. She nodded. They spat at me, called me worthless, and I believed them. Her voice cracked. Until you came. Tears rolled down her cheeks. You didn't ask where I was from. You didn't need my name. You saw me. You saw him. She looked down at her child and touched his cheek. You saw our worth. John's voice was soft. You don't have to prove anything, Nexa. Not to me. You were always enough. She looked up at him with wide, trembling eyes. You make me feel like I still belong somewhere. John reached out and gently took her hand. You do. Later, that night when John stepped outside, the clouds above finally broke. A single beam of moonlight fell onto the ground before him. He looked up, and for the first time in years he whispered a quiet thank you to the stars, because somehow, a man who had lost everything had just been given something more precious than gold. The sun rose gently over the colony. Light touched every rooftop, every broken path. Birds chirped above, and workers began another day. But behind John's workshop, in the small repaired shed, something special was happening. Inside, laughter echoed. Tiny, joyful laughter. The baby, no longer sick, no longer weak, was crawling on a blanket across the floor. His arms wobbled, his legs kicked, and his big eyes sparkled with life. Neza watched from the corner, smiling softly. Her skin had color again. Her hair, once tangled and dirty, was now tied in neat braids. Her clothes were simple but clean. She looked like someone who had survived the storm and was ready to grow. John entered with a tray of warm breakfast, fruit, bread, and hot tea. The moment the child saw him, he let out a squeal and crawled faster. Neza chuckled. He knows the smell of food now. John laughed. Or maybe he just likes me. She tilted her head. Maybe he does. John placed the tray down and lifted the baby into his arms. The little one cooed and reached up, grabbing John's nose with his tiny fingers. John pretended to sneeze. Ah, he got me. The baby laughed harder. Then, something happened. The child looked up at John's face and said in a soft, broken voice, Papa. John froze. Neza turned sharply, her eyes wide. Did he just... Papa? The baby said again, more clearly this time, pointing at John's chest. John's throat tightened. He had no words, just a burning in his heart. Neza slowly stood and walked over. She touched the child's back, her hand shaking. I didn't teach him that, she whispered. John held the child closer. The baby placed his small head against John's chest. He was calm, safe. Neza looked into John's eyes. Maybe he chose you. John's voice was quiet. Maybe I chose him too. That evening, Neza cooked something for the first time. She used small herbs from her homeworld that she had hidden in a cloth pouch all this time. She boiled them into a soup, sweet, fragrant, warm. When she served it to John, she bowed her head slightly. In my culture, she said, you share this with your family. John took the bowl, his eyes soft. Then I'm honored. They ate in silence, sitting side by side, watching the baby sleep nearby. The stars began to appear one by one above them. John looked up. You know, when I lost my wife and child, I thought I'd never feel anything again. No love, no hope, just work and time. Neza listened, her fingers gently folded in her lap. But you, he said, looking at her, you walked into my life like a quiet storm, and you reminded me, I still have something to give. She placed her hand over his, and I still have something to live for. Weeks later, people in the colony began to notice. A strange but beautiful alien woman often walked with a human man through the markets. She held his arm. She smiled when he spoke. She held a child in a sling against her chest, happy, healthy, and always laughing when the man played with him. No one called them burden anymore. They whispered another word family.